Today, we dive into the world of World War II aerial combat to uncover the 5 deadliest fighter aces of the Luftwaffe. And we're not just talking about any pilots. These 5 men not only topped the German kill boards, but also hold the highest confirmed kill counts in the history of aerial warfare, far surpassing their counterparts from other nations. But we won't stop there. At the end of the video, we'll do something really striking. We'll compare the top German ace with the greatest ace from each of the opposing sides in the conflict to truly understand just how exceptional these flying aces were. Before we introduce the legendary pilots we've selected, we need to set the stage with a brief look at how the Luftwaffe evolved throughout World War II. When war broke out in 1939, the Luftwaffe was seen as an unstoppable war machine. In the lightning campaigns across Poland, Norway, and France, it played a decisive role. Following these spectacular victories, it wasn't just the German army that earned a fearsome reputation. The Luftwaffe stood out as the most advanced and effective air force in the world. However, that image began to crack during the Battle of Britain. In the summer of 1940, for the first time, the skies did not belong to Germany. The Royal Air Force fought back with tenacity, and Hitler's dream of invading the British Isles was dashed. Even so, the Luftwaffe remained a formidable force. It was during this period that Hermann Göring, head of the Luftwaffe, famously declared, "If even a single enemy bomb falls on Germany, you can stop calling me Hermann Göring. Call me Meyer instead." But times were about to change. In June 1941, Operation Barbarossa began, the German invasion of the Soviet Union. The Luftwaffe once again shone, providing crucial air support during the early months of the campaign. However, 1942 would prove to be a turning point. 2 major events would forever alter the course of the air war. First, the beginning of Allied bombing raids on German soil. By the end of March 1942, more than 230 British bombers devastated the city of Lübeck, marking the start of an unprecedented air offensive. Even more destructive attacks followed, such as the bombing of Cologne by over 1,000 aircraft and the massive Operation Gomorrah in 1943, which turned Hamburg into a blazing inferno. Second, the disaster at Stalingrad, followed later by the defeat in Tunisia. The Luftwaffe, unable to sustain the airlift promised by Göring, failed to supply the encircled 6th Army. This resulted in a severe loss of trust and dealt a major blow to the Luftwaffe's credibility. The cracks in Germany's once dominant air force were becoming impossible to ignore. By 1943, the Luftwaffe was no longer the dominant force it had been at the start of the war. Its decline wasn't due to a lack of skilled pilots or capable commanders, but to the overwhelming industrial and numerical superiority of the Allies. There simply weren't enough planes, fuel, or trained pilots to keep up on all fronts. And yet, in the midst of this decline, a handful of extraordinary figures emerged. Pilots who, despite mounting challenges, achieved the unthinkable, shooting down dozens, even hundreds of enemy aircraft on their own. Their names have gone down in history as the most lethal fighter pilots of all time. To give you an idea of the scale we're talking about, the Luftwaffe claimed approximately 70,000 enemy aircraft shot down throughout the war. Of these, around 20,000 were British and American planes, while nearly 50,000 were Soviet. So now, strap yourselves in, look to the skies, and join us as we take off into the past to meet the 5 greatest fighter aces of the Luftwaffe, their achievements, their numbers, and their incredible stories. And at the end of the flight, we'll pit them head-to-head against their fiercest rivals. Coming in 5th place in our ranking of Luftwaffe aces is Commander Walter Nowotny, with an impressive total of 258 confirmed aerial victories. Born in December 1920 in Austria, Nowotny was an extraordinary case of early talent. At just 21 years old, he was already flying combat missions over the Eastern Front, facing down the massive fleets of Soviet aircraft. Of his 258 kills, a staggering 255 were scored on that front. His meteoric rise through the ranks of the Luftwaffe didn't go unnoticed. In October 1943, Nowotny became the first pilot to reach 250 kills, a feat that made him a true icon of German aviation. Thanks to his youth and charisma, he became a central figure in Nazi propaganda, portrayed as the embodiment of heroism, bravery, and military excellence. His face appeared in magazines, newsreels, and posters, turning him into a national celebrity within the Third Reich. But that fame also came with a strategic decision. In late 1943, Nowotny was pulled from the front lines, not just to protect his life, but also to serve in training, public relations, and tactical development. During this period, he played a vital role in shaping the next phase of Germany's air war. In 1944, as Germany's situation grew increasingly desperate, Nowotny was chosen as one of the first pilots to fly the revolutionary Messerschmitt Me 262, the world's first operational jet fighter. This new aircraft represented the Reich's last hope for a technological advantage. Nowotny was placed in command of the first operational jet unit, known as Commando Nowotny. His mission wasn't just to fight. He was also tasked with developing effective combat tactics for this cutting-edge aircraft. Despite the Me-262's serious technical issues, especially during takeoff and landing, Nowotny adapted quickly. Within just a few weeks, he scored 3 confirmed victories on the Western Front, battling the Allied bombers and fighters that constantly filled the skies over Germany. Tragically, his career came to a sudden end. On November 8, 1944, while on a combat mission, Nowotny suffered an engine failure shortly after takeoff. It's believed he was also intercepted by American P-51 Mustang fighters. Whatever the case, his Me-262 crashed near Hsepe, and he was killed on impact. His death dealt a heavy blow to the Luftwaffe and German morale alike. For his combat achievements, Walter Nowotny was awarded numerous honors, including the Knight's Cross with oak leaves, swords, and diamonds, one of the highest military decorations in the Third Reich. Next up on our list of Luftwaffe aces is Captain Otto Kittel, a name perhaps less well known than other German aces, but no less deadly. With 267 confirmed kills, all on the Eastern Front, Kittel earned his place among the most effective and lethal fighter pilots of the entire war. Born in 1917 in Kronsdorf, then part of Czechoslovakia, Otto Kittel began his career as an aircraft mechanic, a role that gave him an in-depth understanding of the planes long before he ever sat in the cockpit. He transitioned to pilot in 1941 at the age of 24 and saw his first combat on the Eastern Front. The extreme weather, vast landscapes, and massive Soviet air formations tested even the most seasoned pilots. Throughout his career, Kittel flew a total of 583 combat missions, almost all of them at the controls of the Focke-Wulf FW-190. His combat style was straightforward, aggressive, and efficient. Unlike many other aces who were rotated out for administrative or propaganda roles, Kittel remained on the front lines until the very end, without pause or reassignment. His record of victories earned him an impressive array of decorations, including the Knight's Cross with oak leaves and swords. Like many of his fellow aces, Kittel became a symbol within the Luftwaffe, though he maintained a lower profile than more media-exposed figures such as Nowotny or Hartmann. By 1944, and especially in 1945, German pilots were facing increasingly desperate battles. They no longer dominated the skies. On the contrary, they flew under conditions of overwhelming inferiority, outnumbered, outgunned, and struggling with severe shortages of fuel, spare parts, and aircraft. Every mission became riskier, and the chances of returning grew slimmer. On February 14, 1945, just 3 months before the end of the war in Europe, Otto Kittel was shot down over Latvia while attacking a group of Soviet ground attack aircraft. Reports indicate his plane was hit by defensive fire from one of the bombers, so-called flying tanks. The hit was devastating, and his FW-190 crashed with no chance of escape. Kittel fought to the very last moment, becoming one of the longest-serving frontline pilots in the Luftwaffe. Third place on our list is Lieutenant General Günther Rall, one of the most iconic and decorated Luftwaffe aces. With 275 confirmed kills, Rall stands among the deadliest fighter pilots of the war. Born in Germany in March 1918, Rall began his military career in 1936 and, after completing his flight training, joined the Luftwaffe just in time to experience the full scope of World War II. At only 21, he was already flying combat missions and quickly displayed an exceptional talent for aerial combat. Over the course of the war, Rall flew 621 combat missions, the vast majority on the Eastern Front. Of his 275 confirmed kills, 272 were Soviet aircraft, making him one of the top specialists in that brutal theater of war. His aircraft throughout the war was the legendary Messerschmitt Bf 109, which he flew to its full potential in every engagement. Rall himself was shot down at least 8 times and on several occasions sustained serious injuries. In one of the most notable incidents in 1944, he was struck by enemy fire that shattered his left hand. The injury required a lengthy recovery, and although he was left with permanent damage, Rall returned to flying with a custom-adapted prosthetic, demonstrating remarkable resilience and dedication to his comrades and unit. For his record, he received numerous honors, including the prestigious Knight's Cross with oak leaves and swords. Despite his intense combat activity, Günther Rall survived the war. After Germany's surrender, he was taken prisoner by the Allies, but later played a key role in the reconstruction of German aviation. During the Cold War, he rejoined the Bundesluftwaffe, eventually becoming Inspector General of the German Air Force. He also worked closely with NATO and had an active career as a military advisor. Günther Rall passed away in 2009 at the age of 91, the last of the great Luftwaffe aces to die. We've now reached second place on our list, occupied by Lieutenant General Gerhard Barkhorn, whose career made him one of the most respected and lethal aces of the Luftwaffe. With 301 confirmed aerial victories across more than 1,100 combat missions, Barkhorn earned his place as the second most successful fighter pilot of World War II, surpassed only by his comrade, whom we'll meet next. Born in Königsberg in March 1919, Barkhorn joined the Luftwaffe in 1937 and saw his first combat action during the campaign in France. However, like most top German aces, it was on the Eastern Front that he forged his legend. Flying the Messerschmitt Bf 109, he developed a highly disciplined and precise combat style, allowing him to rack up an impressive number of kills while maintaining a remarkable ability to survive. He was shot down several times, but always made it back alive. Barkhorn was never someone who sought the spotlight or media attention. In fact, his quiet, humble demeanor stood in sharp contrast to his combat effectiveness. He was one of the few pilots to reach over 300 victories without becoming a prominent figure in Nazi propaganda, something he actively avoided. Nevertheless, his achievements did not go unnoticed within the Luftwaffe, where he was steadily promoted and repeatedly decorated. Among his awards was the Knight's Cross with oak leaves and swords. Toward the end of the war, Barkhorn was selected to fly the revolutionary Messerschmitt Me 262, one of the few aces given the opportunity to pilot this advanced jet fighter. However, by then, fuel shortages, logistical chaos, and overwhelming Allied air superiority severely limited its effectiveness. On April 21, 1945, just days before the final collapse of the Third Reich, Barkhorn took off on what would be his 1,104th mission. While attempting to intercept an Allied bomber formation, his jet suffered a critical engine failure, forcing him to abort the mission and execute an emergency landing. Fortunately, he survived, closing out his extraordinary combat career in dramatic but triumphant fashion. Barkhorn was among the few top aces who survived the war. After a period in Allied captivity, he rejoined the military in post-war Germany, serving in senior positions in the Bundesluftwaffe during the Cold War. He passed away on January 8, 1983, at the age of 64. And now we arrive at the #1 spot on our list. It could be none other than the legendary Erich Hartmann, the most successful fighter pilot in the history of aviation. His name is etched in gold in the annals of the Luftwaffe, and his record has never been surpassed by any other combat pilot. While we've already seen some remarkably young aces, Hartmann stands out as the youngest of them all. Born in April 1922, he began flying combat missions at just 20 years old, earning him the nickname The Kid among his squadron mates. To the Soviets, however, who both feared and respected him, he was known as the Black Devil, a nickname inspired not only by his deadly effectiveness in the air, but also by the dark paint scheme of his aircraft, which became his trademark. Hartmann flew 1,404 combat missions during the war, achieving an astonishing 352 confirmed kills, 345 of which were Soviet aircraft. Only 7 belonged to other Allied forces, emphasizing his almost exclusive role on the Eastern Front. What's even more remarkable is that he achieved this record without ever resorting to reckless or dangerous maneuvers. His combat style was rooted in precision, patience, and expert anticipation of his opponent's movements. On August 25, 1944, at the age of just 22, Hartmann was awarded the Knight's Cross with oak leaves, swords, and diamonds, one of the highest military honors of the Third Reich. Hartmann continued flying missions until the very end of the war, achieving his final victory on May 8, 1945, the very day Germany signed its surrender. After the capitulation, he surrendered to American forces, but was handed over to the Soviets, who regarded him as a war criminal due to the staggering number of aircraft he had destroyed. As punishment, he was sent to a gulag, where he endured 10 harsh years under extreme conditions. He steadfastly refused to collaborate with his captors or abandon his principles. Eventually released in 1955, he returned to West Germany, where he rejoined the newly formed Bundesluftwaffe as an instructor and senior officer. His expertise was instrumental in rebuilding German military aviation in the post-war era. Hartmann passed away on September 20th, 1993, at the age of 71. Now that we've reviewed the numbers behind the 5 greatest Luftwaffe aces, let's take a quick look at the top aces from other nations. In first place, we find Ilmari Juutilainen of Finland, with a total of 94 kills. Japan's top ace was Hiroyoshi Nishizawa, credited with 87 victories, though some sources estimate his actual total as high as 150 due to Japan's unusual system for recording kills. On the Allied side, the Soviet Union's most successful pilot was Ivan Kozhedub, with 62 confirmed kills. The highest-scoring RAF ace was South African pilot Marmaduke Pat Paddle, with 44 kills. The United States top ace was Richard Bong, with 40 confirmed victories. Clearly, the differences between pilots from various countries are vast, and the reasons behind this merit deeper analysis, which we'll cover in a future episode. And one last fascinating fact. Did you know that the JG-52 fighter wing, home to Hartmann, Barkhorn, and Günther Rall, shot down over 10,000 enemy aircraft in total at the cost of just 680 casualties? Between the 3 of them alone, they accounted for over 900 enemy aircraft destroyed. You'll find a link in the description to our recent video on the fall of the Luftwaffe, as well as our social media accounts. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode. Until then, take care and fly safe.